engaging in activity inside of Afghanistan to act as a spoiler. We've seen just these last 6 days a significant reduction in violence in Afghanistan, and we are watching closely to see if the Islamic Republic of Iran begins to take even more active measures that undermine our efforts at peace and reconciliation in Afghanistan, and just as importantly, put our American soldiers who are on the ground there in both the Kabul area and in the West at risk as well. Yeah, this guy had this as part of his territory. We are very mindful that that's an area he knows well and might well seek to expand Iranian activity, both through the Quds Force and otherwise.
Well, I'm glad you're on top of it. How did the Soleimani strike change the IRGC's standing in Iran, and have we been able to take advantage of any loss of prestige through information operations in Iran?
Soleimani was a strategic target. There was strategic deterrence that resulted from that strike. He was absolutely a terrorist. He absolutely had American blood on his hands. He absolutely intended to kill more Americans in the immediate future. But he also occupied a position which was very close to the Ayatollah. And there is no one that is going to be capable of replacing that strategic input that he was able to provide to the Ayatollah. And therefore, we believe not only did we achieve the battlefield deterrence that his departure now has led to, but we also have changed the calculus inside of Iran and the understanding, your point about the red line. It is not possible for the Islamic Republic of Iran to have been surprised by the actions President Trump took. We had communicated clearly that the loss of American lives would result in a strike of significance that would impose real costs on Iran. So we exercised deterrence by making sure they understood what America was prepared to do, and then when they took actions that were inconsistent with the things that we had told them, we executed against that.
Very quickly, media reports this week show that the vice president of Iran, as well as Iran's top health official, have both contracted coronavirus. Are you able to comment on the potential destabilization of Iran? Were there senior political leadership to be deathly ill or even perhaps die? Specifically, does the state have concerns about a void in leadership as it relates to their nuclear program and the Quds Force?
I don't have very much information about beyond what we've seen in the open press reporting. And as I said earlier, we're going to do what we can on the humanitarian side to assist the Iranian people against building out their systems inside of the country.
I thank you. I thank you for your time. I yield back.
Ms. Spanberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, after the strike, you were the administration's point person making the case that we had to kill Soleimani at that moment on January 3rd. Here's what you said. I'll read it. You said, we had specific information on an imminent threat, and those threat streams included attacks on U.S. embassies, period, full stop. That was January 10th, after you had about a week to get your story straight, except when we're looking at the fact that taking out Soleimani was essential to addressing a blow to Iran's malign activity. I question the fact that the day after Soleimani's death, Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei appointed Soleimani's longtime deputy to replace him and continue operations. They didn't stop and they didn't slow down. Isn't that true? Didn't they shoot rockets at our people just days later, sir? The answer is yes. And the same day that you made that statement, you gave a classified briefing in Congress. I was there, and you didn't provide evidence to us about that claimed imminence.
That's not true.
The evidence of that claimed imminence was not given during that briefing.
We absolutely did.
And, sir, you and I both know that the claim of imminence was necessary and pivotal to the administration's justification for action in circumventing Congress. I said there was nothing in that briefing. With conflicting information, it's hard. With conflicting information, it's hard for the American people to know what to believe. But fortunately, we have what's called a 1264 report, and the president is required by law to send this report to Congress to explain the legal and policy justifications for killing Soleimani. And since it's a crime to make false statements to Congress, I presume that we can take the 1264 at face value. We received this on January 31st. Sir, how many times does this report refer to an imminent attack on a U.S. embassy that would be stopped by killing General Soleimani? The answer is none. So your own report directly contradicts what you and the president told the American people over and over. You said there were imminent threats to American lives, and that's not true. And when the administration was constrained by the law to tell the truth, you abandoned the talking points. Mr. Pompeo, there's another report on Iran that is due this Sunday. It's required by a piece of law that I authored. It should give more transparency to the American people about why you risked plunging us into war, and I expect the president will comply with the law and provide that report this weekend. Do you expect that will be the case, sir?
We always do our best to comply with every legal requirement. I promise you we will continue.
I look forward to reading it. And lastly, as this administration has been so inconsistent with the facts as it relates to coronavirus on matters of security and public health, the American people need credible, consistent information, and we are consistently not receiving that from the administration. I yield to Representative Levin.
Mr. Chairman, is it possible I could respond to a couple things? I wasn't asked a question, but there were.
You were, sir. You didn't answer them. I yield to Representative Levin.
Thank you.
There were material misstatements made.
Mr. Levin controls the time. The problem is we don't have enough time.
All right, thank you,
We've
Mr.
briefed
Chairman.
Congress 70 times.
Sir, to your left, you'll see a map of the world. Right there. Would you please point out for us on this map which of our embassies were under threat of imminent attack so that you had to kill General Soleimani regardless of the consequences for American safety on January 3rd, 2020?
Sure. I'm happy to answer your question.
Which four?
I'm happy to answer your question. I'm not going to get into classified material today.
Okay, well, sir, reclaiming my time, we all know that Soleimani was a bad guy, but what I'm talking about is the decisions made leading up to January 3rd that brought us to the brink of war, and you're not willing to tell us which embassies were under attack? Under threat of attack?
I'm never willing to disclose classified information. I assume you're not either.
Right, sir. Well, you can't hide behind classification on this one because you can't classify something that doesn't exist. The administration has given us shifting stories, you, the president, others, about what was going on there. On January 10th, the same day you briefed Congress, the president said this to Fox News.
I can reveal that I believe it would have been 4 embassies.
So this is, again, the same day you were up here briefing us, and I was there on Soleimani strikes, and we didn't hear a word from you on the threats to 4 embassies. Why not?
There were multiple embassies, which my diplomatic security team had enormous concern about.
Sir, I have such little time.
Are you going to let me answer the question?
No, because you're not answering the question, sir. I'm not asking you to reveal classified information.
Mr. Chairman, when you please let the witness answer the question.
Well, let me
Out of
say this.
respect.
I want the witness to answer the question. I hope that when we run out of time at the end that the Secretary will agree to stay for a few extra minutes.
I will not agree to stay for a few minutes, but I'm happy to answer whatever questions I can.
Well, then,
Mr. Chairman,
this is the problem, Mr. Secretary.
we briefed 70 times, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
All
right, Mr. Levin.
Yes, sir, here's the bottom line. If we had the time, I would play the Defense Secretary's statement that he had no information about embassies. We're facing a possible coronavirus pandemic. This administration had 3 different stories about the events that brought us to the brink of war. So it's no surprise that Americans are scared because this administration keeps proving it can't be trusted to tell us the truth. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Zeldin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here. I apologize. This hearing has been a joke. You're getting asked a lot of questions that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are choosing either to answer the question for you if you don't answer in the first split second of them finishing with the question mark, or if you attempt to answer, they cut you off to reclaim their time. So I first would like to give you the opportunity to answer any of the questions posed, because what we just witnessed, for anyone at home witnessing the last 5 minutes, it's an embarrassment. Mr. Secretary, go ahead.
Well, let me just say to Mr. Zeldin, what's really an embarrassment is that we couldn't get more than 2 hours from the Secretary of State. That's really an embarrassment to this committee. Mr. Zeldin.
Mr. Secretary.
So the record should reflect that the United States government has briefed Congress over 70 times on the issue of Iran. So I think it's difficult to claim that we've not been prepared to share. Indeed, I briefed all of you. Some of you have referred to that briefing extensively. I briefed the Senate side as well. Every member